Good morning, and welcome to the Chiefs briefing for the January 20th, 2026 House of Delegates special election for the 17th District. Thank you for serving as a chief or an assistant chief in this election, and thank you for joining us this morning for this briefing, and happy Friday. We're going to cover a number of important specifics for the special election, as well as cover some reminders and go through several topics. Before we do that, though, I'd like to do some introductions. First off, my name is Sean Rogers, and I serve as our Training and Operations Manager here in the Election Administration Division of the Office of Elections. And I'm happy to be delivering this briefing on behalf of our Electoral Board, which consists of our Chairman, Catherine Hanley, our Secretary, Kevin Pinkney, and our newest member of the Electoral Board, the Vice Chairman, Megan Challender. As you may know, in Virginia, the electoral boards of every locality are required to consist of a majority of the same party as the governor. With a new governor in office, our most recent, we've had one board member roll off of the electoral board and another board member join us. So we thank our most recent board member, Jeffrey Shapiro, for his service to the voters of Fairfax County. And we wish him well, and we hope he stays in touch. And to Megan, welcome to the electoral board, and you'll be sure to see more of her soon. We also have here our general registrar and our deputy general registrar, Eric Spicer and Cheryl Jones. Eric or Cheryl, is there anything you want to say before we get going today?
Sure. Thank you, Chiefs, and thank you so much for all of you Chiefs and Assistant Chiefs that are returning once again. You and the election officers are the front line of democracy in Fairfax County. And it's a big job. It comes with a lot of responsibility. We know that. And we also know that we're expecting you to understand an awful lot about the job, about elections and processes. And that's why these briefings and your manual are so important. I know you may be thinking, oh gosh, another election, we have to do another briefing, but it's really important. So we appreciate you being here today. On election day, keep in mind that we're your support team. You're leading the effort out there. So anytime you have a question, you have a problem, don't hesitate to call us. We have people by the phone just waiting for you to call, and we'll help you with problems. It's no black mark against you at all. We'd much rather you do the job correctly. The citizens of Fairfax County are counting on you. So I'm not going to talk any longer. We'll get into this so it doesn't last too long. But again, thank you so much. We absolutely could not have successful elections in Fairfax County without you, and especially without experienced chiefs and assistant chiefs. We all know we've been there. We've been in the trenches. And we know that every election, you get a little bit better, you learn a little bit more, and that's important for us.
Thank you for those kind words, Cheryl. I'm sure that they appreciate it. I appreciate it. And something you mentioned just a second ago reminded me to also say Happy New Year to everyone. We've been so busy here getting ready for special elections that want to take a moment and thank you for coming back and serving as a chief and assistant chief here. But we won't belabor the point here. We'll jump into our briefing. We have a number of staff who are going to be delivering the content that I mentioned a minute ago. As I mentioned, my name is Sean Rogers. We also have our clerk to the electoral board and polling place coordinator, Beth Methfessel, here, as well as our election officer manager, Arash Setayeshi, and our training and operations specialist, Jean Tenson. Jumping into our agenda, we're going to cover an overview of this election and what's new, which is not very much because when we have multiple elections back to back, we try to minimize changes for you. And then we'll jump into election day and cover some topics and reminders. So we'll talk about before election day, opening the polls during the day, and some considerations for non-routine and provisional voters, and then closing the polls before we continue to final reminders and a Q&A. Anytime during this briefing, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature in Zoom at the bottom of your screen. Please don't put them in the chat. Go ahead and use the Q&A feature. We'll be responding to them throughout the briefing, and at the end, we'll answer them live as well. So we'll talk now about the overview of the election. I want to mention first that everything you're going to need is going to be in your Chief's notebook. We encourage you to review the table of contents and familiarize yourself with the contents before this election and every election in general. One thing I will mention, though, is that there's just one addition for our January special elections. As you may or may not already be aware, We actually have multiple special elections coming up here in Fairfax County. We have an election on Tuesday, January 13th, next Tuesday, which is why we're doing this briefing on a Friday. Ordinarily, we do them on a Tuesday before the election, but next week we're going to be pretty busy dealing with the special elections. That's why we're talking to you here on a Friday. And then we have the special election on January 20th that we're talking about here today. Both of those are covered in the Chief's Notebook. The one difference I'll mention is that ordinarily we would put specific dates in there for things like contacting your election officers in your polling places. You won't find those in this Chief's Notebook, but it's still important to do, and we'll talk about the timeline for that in a later section here. One thing I am happy to mention, though, is that when we put the Chief's Notebook on the admin tablet on Election Day, we were able to, in our most recent special election in December, it's hard to keep track when we have so many special elections, we were able to make that file searchable on the admin tablet. So you'll be able to use Command F on the keyboard to search for any keyword through the notebook on Election Day. So we're thankful to our IT team for making that happen. But yeah, go ahead and review the Chief's Notebook before Election Day. It is posted right now on the election officer portal, and we expect to receive hard copies within the next couple of days. Arash will talk about getting them to you, but at the end of the day, they are going to be packed in your Chief's kit, one for your chief and your assistant chief. In the notebook, we have one-page guides for basically any task. We have checklists for all of the opening procedures, before Election Day procedures, during the day, and for closing, as well as for the chief to keep track of all of that during opening and closing. And we encourage you to use these checklists. The goal is that you shouldn't have to memorize things. It's definitely great to get familiar with the process and know the step-by-steps, especially from experience. But on a long day like Election Day, our hope is that you can refer to these guides, use the checklists, have your election officers use the checklists, and get through everything easily and without too much trouble that way. So these guides are also on our election officer portal, and they're viewable either just like the Chief's Notebook. You can view them, or any of your regular election officers can view them if they want to see them before Election Day. Ultimately, though, you'll have printouts to hand out to your election officers on Election Day. We encourage you to give those out to people, and especially the closing ones. Go ahead and give them to them in advance so they can familiarize themselves with their closing duties, which Gene will talk about later in the briefing. So now, what is this election? Like I said, it's a special election for the 17th Virginia House of Delegates district. The prior office holder has resigned to take a position in the new governor's administration, and so that caused a vacancy, which we're having an election for here now. There are two candidates on the ballot with one spot for a write-in. And just so you know, this is a special election. So there is a provision there that registered voters who are currently 17, but who are going to be 18 by the time of the next general election, are able to vote in this special election. So if they're a registered voter, they would already be on your electronic poll book. If they're not yet registered and they fall into that category that I just mentioned, 17, but will be 18 by the next general, they'd be eligible to do a same-day registration, which is something that applies in primaries and in special elections like this one. In terms of the resource allocation for your precinct, you'll have the same amount of equipment that you're used to, 3 to 5 e-poll books, depending on the size of your precinct, as well as 2 each of ballot marking devices, ballot scanners, and admin tablets. You'll also be receiving ballots for 15 to 25% of your active registered voters. Special elections don't tend to have crazy turnout, but we want to be prepared so that you have enough ballots that you're not going to run out. You also receive 5 to 6 total election officers, depending on the expected turnout in your precinct based on turnout trends and the size of your precinct. That's going to include the chief and the assistant chief, as well as 1 to 2 collector officers, depending on if you're co-located, and then the rest being all other officers. In larger elections, we would assign provisional specialists to help with the parts of the provisional process, such as sitting with the voter while they fill out the envelope, doing the provisional log, ordinarily when we would expect large amounts of provisional ballots. Because this is a smaller special election, we don't expect as many. The chief or the assistant chief together will be responsible for the entire process from start to finish, from determining the eligibility to vote a provisional like you normally do, but also the mechanics of working it through. So having the voter fill out the envelope, ensuring you've checked everything, and inserting it into the log and so forth. So that's an overview of the election and the resources you can expect to receive. I'm going to focus now on what's new and what's different for a special election. One big thing is that in larger elections, we have several depots across the county for supply pickup and material return on Monday and Tuesday, respectively. For this special election, because of multiple constraints, those are costly for us to operate. They delay things for us, and there are various constraints with respect to operating our depots. Consequently, for this special election, we won't have any other depots other than here at the Fairfax County Government Center. What this means for you is that for your supply pickup on Monday, so Monday the 19th, you'll have to do that from the government center here. And similarly, on Tuesday night, when you return your materials, you'll be coming back here to the government center. I believe we put this in an email in our availability or some prior emails that we sent to you. So hopefully this isn't a surprise, but it is a different, especially for the part of the county that the 17th district is in. We'll be sending out a form to pick your or let us know of your intended time to pick up your supplies later next week. Another big thing is that our election officer portal won't be used for this election. Now, I did just say portal, and that's true. A lot of our content, a lot of our static content is there and viewable and publicly viewable to you or to anybody. So the Chief's Notebook is still going to be on the portal. Our one-page guides and other resources are still going to be on the portal. And our online on-demand classes, if you want to review anything here in this new year, that's all going to be on the portal for you to use. What we can't do in the election officer portal for this election are those various self-service actions that you can go in and take and view your roster. Things like viewing your roster, viewing your polling place information and your facility contacts, seeing your chief checklists, and so on. All of those items aren't available in the election officer portal for this election simply because we have multiple back-to-back special elections. So we have an election on January 13th, like I mentioned. Then we have this one, January 20th. And then we, depending from there, we have more special elections coming up. We know we have one in March already, and the election officer portal can only handle one election at a time. Don't worry, though. We're still going to send you all of this information by email. We're going to send you links to the same information, your roster, precinct contact information, and so on. We'll be sending that to you later on today. So just be aware that a lot of the things you would normally consult in the election officer portal specific to the election, we're just going to be sending that out to you separately. With respect to facilities, there are some differences for a special election because it's a smaller election. I'm actually going to turn it on over to Beth here to talk about some considerations for facilities and FCPS in specific. Beth?
Thank you, Sean. And I'll echo what has already been said. Thank you so much for your service. I know this is a very challenging time of the year to have a special election, and we've got multiples, so we're busy pretty much every minute of the day. So the most important thing I think to remember is that school will be in session. So we have some drop off and pickup times that will be a little bit challenging for voters, possibly to access the facility, the entrances. Hopefully, we have good workarounds for that. And the information about the polling places where the entrance that voters are used to will change for this election will be sent out with the email that's going to contain precinct information. School security has already visited all of the schools that will be used for this election. I have also visited all of the schools that are going to change the entrance that voters are used to. I have placed information, well, it's in the portal right now, but you'll receive it in an email to hopefully help you and give you some suggestions and guidance with how to set up your room, which once again, most of these locations that are in schools will not be in rooms that voters are used to. There are a couple that will be a little bit tricky with respect to parking. There are two schools. Lane Elementary and Claremont Elementary, where voters will have to walk past the main door to go around the side of the building to enter the room where they'll be voting. So in these locations, you're certainly going to be receiving additional vote here signs. I also want to mention that we are creating posters that will be placed at the usual entrance that direct voters to the new entrance, the one that they'll be using for the January 20th special. Um, as it Another interesting twist for this election is that Monday is going to be a holiday. The school has still provided the same time frame for setup, which is 3:30 to 6:30. So you will follow the same procedure. You'll reach out to the contact for the school, or those of you that are not going to be serving in schools, the same thing applies. You'll reach out to your facility contact to set up a time on Monday afternoon for setup. I want to point out, I know I keep hammering on the schools, but it would be best if the meeting at the school for setup on Monday, well, actually, the school kids aren't. See, I'm conflating this with the January 13th. So there's no kids on Monday. So you're free to choose a time, between that 3:30 and 6:30 time frame on that particular Monday. I also want to mention that a couple of the schools, not all the schools are going to be as how do I say this, accommodating for election officers to access the building. So I really want you to encourage those of you, you chiefs, to let your election officers know that they may not have a microwave or a refrigerator available for food. So some schools are going to be very restrictive with respect to that. Other schools are not. And some facilities have a microwave and refrigerator in the room. Those of you that will be serving in a gym or something like that, there are bathrooms there and water fountains, but you'll probably have to bring everything else that you need because you will not have access to the teacher's lounge. And that information will also be sent out specific to your precinct.
Thanks, Beth. We're definitely a bit of an imposition on their school day, but we appreciate them having a space for us to run the special election. We can't do it without our facilities, so we're glad that they're able to work with us, and we just recommend that you be in contact with them for anything more specific that they need you to know. So things like everything Beth just mentioned will be in a link that we send out later this afternoon, anything specific to your polling place along with your roster. Moving on to other things that are new. This one's not quite new per se. It was new in the November election, so your election officers may not still be fully familiar with this process. We have replaced our multiple different one case per e-poll book with just one large case that can fit all of the EPBs that you would have in your precinct, whether you have 3, 4, or 5. There's consequently just one seal number to record because the one case is sealed. You'll record that at the end of the day. And hopefully this should be easier to transport, maybe a little bit more difficult to pack in your cage overnight, but it definitely does fit. The other thing to keep in mind about that is that there is one additional step when it comes to the e-poll books, and that's attaching the arm to the back of them. That's something that we've always been able to, in the past, send out pre-attached. However, it is a detachable part, and to make it fit into this one large case, your election officers just have to push in the clips and clip it onto the back of the EPB. That's a pretty straightforward process. It's not too complicated, but it will be only the first or second time that your election officers will have done that. So there are one-page guides that walk through the procedures. If you run into any difficulty with this or with anything in general, you can call your Rover or a tech support helpline. We can walk you through this or anything. Just want to mention that this is a slight difference from the past, but everything else is still the same here with these. So that's it for an overview of the election and what's new and what's specific to this special election. I'm going to turn it over to Arash here to talk to you about the timeline leading up to the election and then talk about election day itself and cover some important reminders. Arash?
Thanks, Sean. Hi, everybody. Or should I say hello again, everyone? I think we saw a lot of you, if not earlier this week, then definitely for December and certainly for November. So hope everyone's had a happy new year. We certainly have, as we've been busy here. And let's just get started. So as you've seen before, if there's anything to take away from my section of the briefing, again, it's this slide, even more importantly now than in the past, because we would love for our communications to not be missed regarding this upcoming election on the 20th. or mixed up with any of the other ones you may be receiving if you are also serving on the 13th. We'll be in touch with any important and relevant updates between now and the 20th. So please make sure again that our number is saved into your contacts and our email is on your wait list so that it does not get lost in your spam or junk mail. I think we've already had a few people who we have to follow up with to confirm their assignments, and it just happened to be in their spam. So just please make sure to keep an eye on that. One of the biggest things we want to make sure that people know that it's a little bit different. We don't want anyone to fall out of the good habits we've been forming using the portal for tasks and such. Is that we will not be using the portal for keeping track of tasks leading up to the election. However, such as you've seen in your chief notebook in the past, there is a more or less rough guideline of when these things need to be done. We'll obviously be in touch with more finite dates. There are some on this presentation that you'll be seeing, but just keep in mind as a chief and also your assistant chiefs and even some of your reserves should be aware of the progress of what these tasks are and when they're due. Just a couple things to highlight here. Your deadlines for a couple of these items are going to be coming up pretty soon. Um, like Sean had said earlier, we are going to be sending you your list of election officers on your roster a little bit later today. It will be a live list, similar to what you would see in your portal, where as people potentially cancel and are replaced, you will have an up-to-date list of people that you can access, as well as your polling place contact information. We ask that once you receive this today, that you start reaching out and make contact with your polling place contact and set up a time for your polling place visit next week, as well as reaching out to your roster to get things going. And if there are any issues you run into regarding their availability, we can address that as soon as possible by getting a replacement. When you are contacting your polling place contact, please make sure, like we've already said before, this is a very different type of election. Schools will be open. You may not be in the same room. We have, thanks to Beth, gotten an updated survey from them regarding any changes. So if you are not in your typical room, we will be able to let you know where you are. But things like amenities, such as having access to a refrigerator, microwave, storage area, break room, those are things that you may need to be able to confirm with your polling place contact, as well as logistics such as parking, table and chair availability, as well as coordinating a good setup time with them. Next up is going to be the fact that we have uh, the Fairfax County Government Center as your depot for both pickup and drop off. Sean already went into this a little bit, but we do understand that because we have the smaller election and we have our chiefs normally out in the Mount Vernon area going to Mount Vernon Government Center, we just want to make sure that there's no confusion about uh, needing to return everything at the end of the night back over here into Fairfax County Government Center. All right. And aside from all the other chapters in your Chief's Notebook, as you've seen in the past, as always, a very important one is going to be chapters 14 and 15 regarding your emergencies and evacuation procedures. As we've already said before, we would love for this to be something that is relatively recent in your memory and that you do not need to be fumbling or thumbing through the notebook in case of an emergency, and that you can act swiftly and purposefully as a member of the precinct leadership. All right, and moving over to opening the polls. At this point, you have already gone in the day before and set up the precinct. As always, we want to make sure that you are not opening up your orange pouch. As a reminder, that orange pouch is where you're going to be able to find your equipment keys, your passport card, and your voter permit cards. But again, you cannot open the orange pouch until election morning. On election morning, you want to make sure that you are setting up and preparing both scanners, even if you are planning on only using one. So that means that by 6 a.m., you are pressing go to voting mode on both of them. Now, if you are only going to use one, you can always turn around the second one and direct voters only to the only one you're using. But that way, if there is any sort of issue or if it does start getting busier, you have a second ballot scanner ready to go. And once everything is already set up and you obviously by then sworn everyone in, we ask that you gather everyone around before 6 a.m. to go over emergency preparations and procedures. That way, everyone knows where their guides are for each one of their positions, and that yeah, everyone's on the same page. Also, if there are any election officers that are running late, we ask that you wait until 5:30 a.m. before calling us to let us know. But afterwards, we will be dispatching reserves to you so that you'll be fully staffed for the day. In addition to having our number, we want to make sure that you're aware of two other numbers that are specialized in the support that can provide you on election day. These will be found on the inside cover of your Chief's notebook, and I also highly suggest adding them to your contacts on your phone. The differences of them are very important. If you are going to be dealing with anything related to voter issues related to voter registration, SDR, provisional, or even specific voter questions, we are having several elections overlapping, and we have voters who may have been issued a mail ballot, but they weren't aware, and you may be checking them in and see that. If there's ever any concerns, we ask you call the voter support number regarding that. Any kind of equipment issues, I know sometimes we have had our rovers be called regarding technical issues, but a lot of times if they are dealing with another precinct, we ask that you instead call the tech support number because they can not only triage and support you over the phone, but they can also then dispatch your rover or a regional rover if there's an urgent matter. For anything else, we have our main number for you to call. Again, please call after 5:30 for any election officers that haven't arrived or regarding any kind of general policy or procedure. And now during the day, we want to make sure that everyone is up to date on what our procedures and asks are. We are still having the three check-in surveys or the turnout surveys, excuse me, at 9 a.m., 12 p.m., and 3 p.m. Please make sure that your admin tablets are accessible and ready to go. You may receive a call from us if we have not seen one come out in time, but otherwise, this is no different than any other election we've had so far. You'll also find on page 1.6 of your Chief's notebook the list of authorized representatives and individuals who are allowed inside the polling place, as well as the level of access they have, as well as what credentials they need to provide. Just very briefly, with media, there are restrictions based on where they can film, where they can interview, and for how long they're permitted to stay. In terms of emergencies, again, if this is a life-threatening or other kind of medical emergency, we ask that you immediately call 911 after assessing and addressing anything that's going on. Afterwards, we will need to know in the office. We have had a few instances where we find out afterwards on the next day when we're going through paperwork and we notice that there's a medical incident report. We would love to not wait until the next day to find out about this because we do have a turnaround time for things like that. But also in the office, we would love to be aware of what's going on. So we do ask that at some point when it is possible to contact the office and keep us up to date as to what has transpired. And speaking of the medical emergency incident report form, this will be found in the red emergency envelope. Hopefully you'll never need it, but this is something that could have happened to a voter, an election officer, or anyone else inside your polling place within the 40-foot line. And in some cases, you could have had someone who is just outside of it, but they were a voter and they're still on the premises. This is something that we fortunately have not needed as much recently because so many of you have been amazing about keeping up with your polling place contacts to make sure you have, especially if you're in a school, you have the appropriate number of chairs and tables that are adult sized. So we have not had as many concerns regarding falls. So thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to kick it back over to Sean regarding non-routine and provisional voters. Sean?
Thanks, Arash. I just want to mention, while we hope for there to never be any sort of emergency, these are important to keep in mind. I don't say this to scare anybody, just to let you know that it does happen. In our most recent special election, we did have a polling place that had to temporarily evacuate outside. It ended up being a false alarm, but that's why it's good that they were ready with the procedures. Additionally, I also want to emphasize the turnout surveys that Arash said those are important. You may get a call from us if we don't see them, because that's how we know that you're going to have enough ballots to make it through the day in this special election, where turnout's a little bit harder to predict because it's not a big general election. With that being said, I'm going to talk a little bit about non-routine and provisional voters, because I'd be remiss if we didn't mention that. I just want to cover the resources that you have and give you a couple of reminders for what are our most common things that we see. In terms of those resources, we give you a good amount to help you get to the best answer to help out any given voter, depending on their circumstances. In our Chief's Notebook, in Chapter 8, we have a chapter called Non-Routine and What Ifs, which covers an overview or a highlight of some common non-routine situations. And then you have the What Ifs, which are a set of 23 different what if questions. You can think of it, what if this, what if that, what if this happens, what if that happens? These are prepared by the Department of Elections, and we change the terminology so it matches our voting equipment and put it into your notebook for you. So these are some of the more detailed information where you can help out voters who are in different statuses or in different situations. You can read the full explanation for why this happens and what you should do step by step. Additionally, we have in the notebook chapter 10 is called problem solving. That contains information for things that aren't necessarily voters in other statuses or non-routine voters, but still some things in the polling place that you may want a refresher on or a walkthrough for. So things like canceling or editing a voter check-in, say for a voter who needed assistance or changed their mind, or for dealing with mismarked or spoiled ballots or things of that nature. Beyond what's in your Chief's notebook, you also have the ePollbook prompts that will trigger on any voter that has a status that we can prompt on. So things like a voter who has an absentee ballot, such as with this example, you can see on the screen that it says why it happened. So a voter has returned their by mail absentee ballot and we've pre-processed it. The instruction is for your election officer. In most cases, it's going to be sent to the chief or the assistant chief. And then for the chief, it puts together the instruction and where you can find more information. So it tells you what you can do for this voter, which in this example is a provisional with reason number 5 already voted. And you can use Section A on your voter referral worksheet to walk through this and refer to What If 20C for more information. And as always, we're available by phone to walk you through anything, especially in this special election. We're going to be waiting by the phones to help you out in case you need any assistance with anything. Anything that we have the ability to trigger one of these prompts on, we will. So things like inactive voters or voters who are marked for address confirmation, or just any other voter status like an overseas voter or something like that. There's a full list of these in the Chief's Notebook in that Chapter 8. So you can look at that online now or when we get you that hard copy. Beyond these resources, we also have the voter referral worksheet, which is required for non-routine voter situations that are likely to become a provisional. And that's kind of a mouthful. I can summarize that down to a couple of categories. It's voters who have an absentee status of some kind on the poll book, so any of those red statuses, a voter who's marked as already voted, or a voter who is not registered on your poll book, so they might need an SDR, or maybe they've moved. This worksheet gives you a place to work through what the best option is for that voter. It's a worksheet, so that's why it's kind of wordy, but there are 4 different sections depending on which circumstance the voter falls into. And that 4th section, of course, is just if you're unsure, it gives you a place to write down any information you need to work through with the voter or call our office to talk through anything. So like with a voter who has moved or who is not registered, this place gives you a spot to write down their address and the precinct that corresponds to their address, so you can determine if it's the right place for them to do an SDR, because they have to live in your precinct to do an SDR. And if you have to work through the moving conditions or the move voter rules, you also have spaces to write down the information that you're going to need to find the answer for that. We found in the past that a lot of chiefs were writing on scrap paper and that sort of thing. So the referral worksheet gives you a place to put all that in one spot and then work through the full process end to end for a provisional voter. So in terms of the steps, that whole first section is for working through what are you going to offer this voter, whether that be this voter can surrender their ballot, they're going to need to vote provisionally, maybe they're only eligible at another location, or maybe they are eligible to vote routinely. That's what you work through with these non-routine voters as you kind of figure out what's the best way to help them using this resource and the other resources that we talked about. On the back side, you can mark and sort of memorialize the reason why you issued this provisional. And then the rest of the backside is a checklist. So ordinarily, your provisional specialist would jump through this 12-step checklist. And 12 steps is a lot of steps, but it's really just the whole procedure written out so you don't have to memorize it. Like we said, we're not that big on memorization. We want to give you information that you can have for reference on election day so that you can be sure that you're getting everything right. So these are the sequence of steps to take care of a provisional from start to finish, from having the voter start with their provisional all the way through inserting it into the provisional bag, including logging it, giving the voter their notice, and so on. Of course, having the voter vote their ballot. But in this election, with no provisional specialist, the chief or the assistant chief will be responsible for the whole process, start to finish. And how you divvy this up in your precinct is up to you. If you want to have one person start the first half and the other person finish it, or have the chief or the assistant chief help the voter the whole time, depending on how busy your precinct is, that division of labor is up to you. You just have to have two people check that the envelope is filled out completely. That's one of the steps on the back, step number 6. Having talked about the resources available to you, I'm just going to mention some common mistakes here as we go through a couple of reminders for this section. For a voter who is not registered at all, or maybe has moved from their registered address, we commonly see this as a same-day registration. It's basically our most common provisional type in larger elections. Voters are eligible to do a same-day registration in the precinct where they live if they're otherwise eligible to register to vote. The biggest thing for you to confirm is that the voter has showed up to the precinct where they live. You'll use the precinct and address lookup app on the admin tablet to type in their address and find out what precinct that is and if that's your precinct. Keep in mind, if the voter has moved, they may have additional options. So if they were previously registered and they moved to a new address, that's when you'll work through, okay, are we in the right place to do an SDR, or should I give you another option? The other thing that we see pretty commonly is voters who have been sent an absentee ballot and they decide, hey, I want to vote in person. That's fine. They just have to bring their absentee ballot with them so they can surrender it to vote and receive a ballot to vote in the precinct. That's a pretty common one. That's in section A on the voter referral worksheet. And you'll see there that if you are good to go with that process, you don't have to keep filling those out for those voters because that's a pretty simple process, or pretty straightforward process, I should say. It's a simple exchange of their absentee by mail ballot for a ballot to vote in the precinct. Of course, if they came in to vote and they didn't bring their ballot with them for whatever reason, their option would be to vote provisionally. The provisional envelope itself has two sides to it. One side is for all SDRs. The other side is for all other provisional reasons. So like the circumstance I just mentioned where a voter is in an absentee status and they didn't bring their ballot, or maybe they're marked as already voted, or any of those. Any other reason, you use the reverse side of the envelope, the side with the flap. This is important to remember that there's a distinction because these two sides of the envelope are similar, but they're not equivalent. The SDR side of the envelope asks for different and more information than the non-SDR side of the envelope. So be sure that you're issuing the correct side of the envelope, instructing the voter to complete the correct side of the envelope, depending on which reason they're voting provisionally. And it's easiest to just remember, you can see right there on the envelope, there's one side that's just stamped SDR, and that's for SDRs. Everything else is on the other side. To make it easier to review a voter's completion of the envelope, as you can see, there is it's kind of hard, especially when a voter writes in black ink, and there's a lot of black ink already on the envelope, and there are certain sections which are marked with an asterisk, certain sections which are not required, certain parts of different sections that are required. We want to make it as easy as we can for you. So we have plastic cutouts that you can overlay on top of the envelope that will be sized to the envelope that hide out and include all of that extraneous information. This lets you focus on the required information that the voter has to complete and that you as the election officer are completing on the envelope. We've had these since last November, so they're not new. Just a reminder that you can, we encourage you to utilize these because we want to make the process as simple and straightforward for you as possible. We want to give you tools to help you succeed. If you see anything amiss when you put the overlay on top of the provisional ballot envelope, you'll just want to take it off and take another look and see if the voter needs to add additional information or anything like that. For example, when we have checkboxes on the application, that's easy for a voter to miss. Think about if you're going down a form and you're writing information, it's easy to just skip past the checkbox. So there are some checkboxes on the provisional envelope. One of them is question number 3, which asks, have you been disqualified to vote for felony conviction or having been judged mentally incapacitated, a voter is required to answer this question when they're doing an SDR. And you can answer either yes or no to that first question. And if you answer yes, it requires a follow-up question as to whether or not those rights have been restored, yes or no. So what you're doing is verifying the voter has a complete answer. So for example, a no to that first question is a complete answer. If they answer yes and then say anything else in the second section, that's a complete answer. The overlays only highlight the no in that first section because it's the most common thing we see. So that's what I was talking about when I say if you see anything amiss, you want to lift it off and make sure the voter has completely filled out the envelope, that they've answered each question. We just highlight the most common things, especially with respect to checkboxes. The other common mistake that I'll mention is more so to be on the lookout for when you're issuing a provisional ballot. I do want to say that reason code number 6, other, is rare. In our experience, whenever we see, or oftentimes when we see a reason code number 6, other, come through, it could have been another provisional reason. It could have been a vote by mail provisional, or oftentimes it could have been an SDR. A reminder that if a voter says, hey, I just went to the DMV 2 days ago, so I don't need to register, you can pause and take a step and say, if they're not on your poll book, that is an SDR. A lot of people don't realize that there's a blockout for registration before an election. And so for much of the month of January, people haven't been able to register or update their registration. If they put in an application, it'll of course be processed later. But if they're not on your poll book on election day, it could be because of something like that. Either way, a reason code number 6 is rare. If you ever think you're about to issue a reason code number 6, give our office a call. We're happy to walk you through if that is the correct determination or if there's something else that could apply. And just as a reminder, the provisional log has a section where you can clarify if or when, say, a voter insists on voting in the wrong location. You've told them, hey, this isn't your precinct, and they insist, hey, I'm going to vote here today anyway. You can let us know that sort of extra information in the provisional log. Finally, this is another sort of new thing, but we've had them for this whole year. We have a green provisional bag where all provisionals go at the end of the process during the day. So whether it's an SDR or a non-SDR, there's a slot on the provisional bag that you'll open up at the start of the day. You'll seal, it's in your opening guides, the provisional bag so it can't be opened throughout the day. And once you finish the process with that provisional ballot, you'll insert it into that bag, which can't be accessed until closing. So just be sure that you've logged that provisional ballot on your admin tablet before you put it in here. I would recommend making a little check mark in the top corner of the provisional ballot itself, just unobtrusively away from any of the other fields, just way in the corner. Hey, as a reminder for myself, I've logged this. It's good to put into the provisional bag. That's an overview of provisional procedures and some reminders for resources you have, and then some common things. There is more content or more details available on the election officer portal in our online on-demand classes for Chief Basics and Provisional Basics if you want to dig into that more. We'll leave that here where it is now for this briefing. I'm going to turn it on over to Jean to talk about closing the polls from here, and then we're going to go through some final reminders, the oath, and the Q&A at the end here. Jean?
Hi, Sean. I expect I will be hearing from some of you on Election Day. I'm part of the team that answers the phone calls for the general support phone number. So you've gotten to the end of the day. Hopefully you've had enough voters to keep yourselves alert and awake. More voters is always good. So the last voter has left the room. It's time to close. So get a drink of water, take some deep breaths, and take a beat, because this is when mistakes happen, when people are rushing versus taking the time to methodically go through all of these wonderful checklists that we've prepared to make sure that you can get everything done, not skip any steps, and not have to remember and memorize how to do things. All right, we're going to be closing the ballot scanners first. You're going to start with the scanner that has the highest public count. And this is undoubtedly in a special election going to be the one scanner that you've actually used through the day, though you did open both of them. You just turned the other one around as a backup, just in case something went wrong with that first one. And that same principle applies at closing. You want to close this scanner first so that in case anything goes wrong, you have that second one as a backup. It's super important that you let the ballot scanning officers do their job to close the scanners. Don't let the collector officers swoop in and try to pull those USB flash drives out of the scanners because they're so in a hurry. No, let the folks follow the checklist, get the scanners closed down, because if you pull those drives too soon, they can get corrupted. And then you're going to want to order some pizza because you're going to be there a little longer than you had anticipated. If anything goes wrong when you're closing any piece of equipment, do call, excuse me, the technical support number on the inside cover of your notebook. Just a moment. And they will walk you through the correct procedure for handling whatever might have occurred in your precinct. The flash drives are color coded. The purple ones go into the purple pouch. The white ones go into the white envelope. It's super, super, super important, and I cannot put enough supers in there, that they go into the right place, because ultimately these flash drives go to different places on this end. The purple pouch ones come to our office and they are used to provide the unofficial results for the election as quickly as possible. A lot of people want to know, even in a special election, who won. And then the white flash drives end up going to the courthouse, and where they sit in a vault somewhere for a while. So that's why we really emphasize this every chief's briefing. Match your colors. And this is the chief's responsibility, not the collector officers. You are preparing these materials, not them. So just double check that. And it is part of your chief's closing checklist. Another part of getting those collector officers out the door is the provisional ballot envelope. During the day, you will have dumped them all into that secure green bag. But now, at closing, 2 people are going to open this bag up. They're going to sort them into 2 piles, SDR, non-SDR. They're going to count them independently and then put all those ballots into the appropriate 1A envelope. We are going to have you return all your 1A envelopes, even if you haven't used them. So if you didn't get any non-SDR provisionals, you're still going to fill out the envelope, you're still going to seal it and indicate there were 0 ballots inside that 1A. That way, it lets us know for sure that you did not get any non-SDR provisionals. And then we're also going to look at that provisional log that you've been completing throughout the day, and we're going to compare that to make sure that everything's all set. The collector officers are going to travel in the same car to the government center. They're going to bring these things that you have prepared for them, and they've prepared as well. These 1As I was just talking about, the purple pouch. Notice that that has a seal threaded through the zipper pull and through the grommet, so that way the pull itself cannot move. And the 1A, I'm sorry, the trip lock bags. The trip lock will have your Dropbox envelopes in it and a chain of custody form. A little tip for that trip lock bag is make sure they tear the receipt strip off the top of the bag before they seal it. If they get it wrong, just give us a call. We'll walk you through the correct way to handle that situation. It's not the end of the world, but it's something that you can help avoid by just letting them know. And it does say it in their 1-page guide to do this. So, again, as long as you follow your checklist, you're going to be good. Co-located precincts, I believe we only have 1 for this one. So collector officers will have double of all of these items. 2 bags, 2 pouches, and 4 envelopes. The poll book case now is 1 case, as Sean mentioned earlier, and we find that this is a little easier to manage at the end of the night if you pack it so that all the weight is towards the center of the case. So the poll books on the right are kind of packed towards the center. Those bases that you see on the left are packed towards the center. That just distributes the weight a little more. Just makes it easier to pick the thing up without it being lopsided and tipping one way or the other. The statement of results is the most important document of the entire day. So we've made a tool. If you've been a chief or assistant chief before, you've done this. The SOR helper, we update it for every single election so that it will show you after you put in all of your numbers from the closing numbers worksheet. Go to your admin tablet, plug in all the numbers, hit submit, and poof, the whole SOR appears on screen, filled out, ready for you to then copy to the front and back of both copies of your SORs. If at any time you get stuck, the numbers don't add up, you're not sure what's going on, give us a call at that general support phone number. Don't call your rover, call us. We're going to be able to respond to you much more quickly at this part of the day. And we're going to get you through that process. Double check those SORs before you put them in envelope number 2. Both sides should be completely filled in, including all the signatures. Don't ever have any blank spots on there because that means something got missed. And a little shout out to our voting equipment team. They have asked us to point out cage safety. Sometimes people are in a hurry when they're packing their cage. And like everything else, there's a checklist. If you don't put things in the correct order and in the correct place in the cage, there may be an actual safety hazard here. If you look at the red arrow on the left picture, there are wireframe pieces of metal sticking out. And if you're the part of the team that's driving the delivery truck to go pick this up, you're trying to maneuver this big cage around with its, things that could poke your eye out, a la Christmas Story. Don't do that, please. Keep it safe. Pack the signs where they're supposed to go, as in this image. Again, the cage packing guide will tell you whether you have the usual gray cage or the precincts that have a black cage, exactly what goes where. If you have any difficulty locking the cage, give your rover a call. They can come over and help you with that. Sometimes it's a little hard to get those 2 bolts, one in the upper, one in the lower, get those into the holes that they're supposed to go into. But if you don't, then you see what happens in the photo on the left where the doors actually can come open and then things can fall out. Again, that is hazardous and we don't want that to happen. And we don't want the equipment to be damaged also. So just give the rover a call in that case. Just a reminder, do fill out the cage security log at the end of the day and put that seal number on your machine certification form. Okay, you're all packed up. You're ready to go. You should have 5 things: a black kit, a pull pad case, bad habit, the e-poll book case. Got to change that photo. The chain of custody form. Make sure you fill this out and sign it that says you're bringing us these things. And we're going to go, yep, sign for it. We got those things. Your box of voted ballots, your box of unvoted ballots. And just a reminder of 2 things. You're going to be calling or texting your rover when you're ready to leave the precinct. They can't go home until all the precincts on their route go home. So let them know that you're done so that they can check you off the list. And we do track this. We will be calling people if we haven't heard from them and it looks like they're maybe taking too long to close and running into an issue. And just a reminder for all of you folks, you're going to be driving these things to the Fairfax County Government Center. If you're not familiar with this location and you have the time, maybe take a drive out here and see where it is. Depending on your route and your particular navigation app that you like to use, it might tell you to get onto the express lanes of 66. Not a good idea unless you want to pay those tolls. So we'll be here, and there will be lots of signage out, lots of yellow signs to direct you through the appropriate part of the parking lot, the appropriate entrance, and then you're going to come down to our loading dock and go underneath the building. It will work a little differently than you're used to at the Mount Vernon Governmental Center. At that location, I believe you get out of the car and go into the building. Here, you're going to stay in your car. We're going to unload it. We're going to take care of you. We're going to make that long drive worth your while. And now we're going to go back to Sean for our final reminders.
Thanks, Gene. Yes, we try to make that a drive-through service if we can. Um, I'll mention a couple of final reminders about this election. Remember that the Chief's notebook is combined for both January elections, so you'll be missing some specific dates in there, but we're going to be sending you everything you need by email. As Arash mentioned, we'll send you a link to your roster, a live link to your roster, as well as polling place specific information that Beth mentioned by email later this afternoon. The timelines are a little bit weird for a special election like this. You know, we're doing this briefing on a Friday. We're sending you stuff at different times than you're used to. You know, we only received the writ of election for this election on Christmas Eve, so it's only been a couple weeks for us as well. So keep that in mind when you're planning out a site visit for later next week, and when you're contacting your election officers that it is a tight timeline, and some of your facilities, while they do know that there is a special election, you may have to work with them a little bit for some amenities such as, you know, break rooms and that sort of thing. All right, now we're going to take the oath. So I'm going to administer this oath to you, and so you can in turn administer the oath to your election officers on Tuesday. So if you'd please hold up your right hand and repeat along with me here. I do solemnly swear that I will perform the duties for this election according to law and the best of my ability, and that I will studiously endeavor to prevent fraud, deceit, and abuse in conducting this election. Congratulations. You have now sworn in to be a chief or assistant chief election officer. And like I mentioned, intern election morning, before polls open, you'll swear in your election officers as well. After this briefing, so sometime this afternoon, we're going to be sending out a link for you to take a short quiz and confirm that you attended or later on watched this briefing if you are watching a recording to confirm credit for having done so. We'll send that out shortly after this briefing concludes later today. And that's going to be due by the end of the day on Sunday, this upcoming Sunday, January 11th. So be on the lookout for that. Just go ahead and I'd recommend getting that out of the way once you receive it. It's a short quiz so that we can make sure to give you credit for this briefing. As a reminder, next week you'll have several tasks that you're going to want to do, such as reaching out to your polling places. I know today is Friday, so it may be a little bit before you can hear back from them. It's just sort of the nature of what we have with these short time frames. So we've been receiving several questions throughout the briefing. We've been typing an answer to them throughout, so hopefully you saw that if you submitted a question, but we'll go ahead and answer several of them live here. And if we don't get to your question, or if you think of one later, you can always reach out by email to electionofficers@fairfaxcounty.gov or give us a call. We're happy to cover anything. We want to set you up for success for this election. Gene, do we have any questions? Oh, sorry, before I do that, before I turn it on over to Gene, ordinarily I would ask Flo and Ben how we're doing for early voting and voting by mail. As I've been kind of mentioning this whole time, we have some weird timelines for this election, so early voting hasn't yet started for this special election. Flo, do you want to talk a little bit about that and what you expect?
Thanks, Sean. Good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. As Sean mentioned, I don't have any numbers to report. Normally I do, but we actually haven't started early voting for House of Delegates District number 17. Actually, early voting starts tomorrow. So if you are eligible for this election and are not assigned to your home precinct, you've got plenty of time to come and vote with us. We have two locations that will be open for this election. Government Center, we're voting here in the Office of Elections, Suite 323, and we're also opening Franconia Governmental Center. Government Center is open Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30, and Franconia Governmental Center is open 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And both locations are open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturdays. So you've got a week to come see us. We look forward to seeing you. Don't forget to vote before Election Day on January 20th. Turning attention to absentee mail. So Ben Howard wasn't able to join us today for this briefing, so I will fill you in on that. Bear with me as I look at the notes he sent. Even with this short timeline, we are sending out mail ballots to folks who are on the permanent absentee list. Specifically, 5,800 ballots will be dropped in the mail tonight for House District or House of Delegates District number 17. We're dropping them off at Merrifield. In the past, we did this just last week, and we found that a number of voters got their ballots as soon as Saturday, but most were in the mailboxes by Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest. So we expect that to happen again. The outer and return envelopes have the election name and date, so there shouldn't be any confusion there. But the return envelopes do not have a large election identifier. It just simply has the name of the election, again, House of Delegates, District number 17, and the election date. Sometimes there's a little bit of confusion as to whether or not people can drop off their different the mail ballots for different elections. They can drop off any mail ballot in your Dropbox. We take care of sorting it out here in the office. So if anyone asks, they can put their Dropbox or their mail ballot in the Dropbox. Finally, one tip, if you could take care of this for us, folks. When a voter comes to exchange their ballot and vote in person, please make sure to follow the procedures in your Chief's notebook and check the ballot, not just the envelope, to make sure that the voter is exchanging the mail ballot for the correct election. As Sean mentioned, we've got a lot of elections going on right now. House District House of Delegates District 11. Early voting for that ends on Saturday, and Election Day is January 13th. So there are ballots floating around for that. So on January 20th, if you have someone who's surrendering an absentee ballot, please check it and make sure that they are exchanging a number 17 House of Delegate District number 17 ballot for the same ballot that you have in your precinct. That's all I have. Back to you, Sean. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing.
Thanks, Flo. With respect to multiple elections back to back, it is important to keep in mind the one nice thing that I'll mention is that these districts are far apart and they don't overlap. So there won't be voters who have one of each ballot, or at least there shouldn't be any voters who come in. It would just be if they're passing through, maybe they work there, maybe they're getting confused. It's definitely something that could happen. So we want you to be aware of that. But these are districts in separate parts of the county. So thank you for the updates. And if you are eligible to vote in this election, feel free to come out and vote next week. Jean, now that we've gone through that update, do you have any questions for us?
We certainly do. I'm going to start off with Sean Stewart. And how do voters even know that we're having a special election and where they should be voting? I saw Sean Stewart.
Cheryl can answer that.
All righty, thank you.
Sure. Let's see. Cheryl, can you answer that? How do voters even know that there's a special election?
Sure. We've sent postcards to all the voters for the January 13 election and for the January 20th election. And believe it or not, we have an election on March 3rd, and we've sent postcards to them as well, letting them know that there's a special election going on that they qualify to vote in. Tells them when early voting starts, tell them about Election Day, and sends them to our website for more information.
That's great. Thank you. I've seen several questions where people are concerned that the information that we typically are doing through the election officer portal and through the notebook, everything is referencing the portal. Sean Rogers, can you just speak a little bit more about how we are going to be managing that kind of communication with the chiefs and assistant chiefs, and how the election officers are going to be getting their information?
Sure, I can speak to that a little bit. The chief's notebook is a large document with a lot of references throughout. And so anywhere that you see the election officer portal mentioned, you can disregard that and consider that we're doing everything slightly alternatively this election. So that's primarily through email. In the emails that we suggest you send out to your election officers in the template we provide, we do mention the election officer portal. And in other places, we say, if you want to cancel your assignment, that's on the election officer portal. If you want to make X, Y, or Z action, that's on the portal. In any of those, you can think that you would send us an email or give us a call. It's a small special election, or relatively small, things considered, 19 precincts. However, where we can, we are going to be sending you out information that updates live. So, like Arash mentioned, your roster, we'll send you a live link to that. It just won't be in the portal. So, if you're going to be communicating with your election officers and you would ordinarily tell them, hey, go to the election officer portal, you can replace that with just reach out to our office. And my apologies, my condolences to you as chiefs and assistant chiefs. That's the what happens when you're the second election in 2 weeks. Our election officer portal can only be used for one election at a time, but don't worry, we have all the information. We just have to do it outside of the portal. We enjoy the utility that the portal provides and the kind of ease of doing certain actions, but for this one, it'll be out of commission for you guys.
We're just rolling with it as best we can. We'll get it done. Let's see. We've got a couple questions. Well, I've got another question for Cheryl. Can you explain why the envelopes 1A need to be sealed, even if we're not using them? That seems like kind of a waste of resources.
Cheryl, I think you're muted. Bushra, Cheryl or Bushra, whoever is able to speak to that. I see both of you muted.
There we are. How about that?
Yeah, we've got you now.
Technology. I'll
Got you
tell
now.
you what, all this technology. It's important to seal empty provisional 1A envelopes as a confirmation that there were never any envelopes in there. This way it comes back sealed with your signatures on it. And also remember, you need to fill out the form on the back of the envelope and write 0 as the number in there. And this works kind of as a chain of custody, confirmation. You're telling us there are no envelopes in there. And when we get it, we know there's no envelopes. If it were just left open, we wouldn't know, maybe were there envelopes in here and they fell out? Did the chief not put the envelopes in the 1A? Are the envelopes in the brown bag instead? We wouldn't know. This way, you're telling us I received no provisional envelopes. And so that's really important.
Oh, thank you. I actually hit a wrong button myself. Thank you, Cheryl. You got a couple questions for Beth. One is, how do we find out what amenities, refrigerator, microwave, things like that, coffee pot that might be available to election officers, since so many people who are in schools are likely to be in different voting rooms?
But the best way to find out that information is when you talk to your facility contact. I know a couple have mentioned to me that they are not going to be permitting the election team to go into the school to the teachers' lounge, and some schools are going to be a little bit less strict. So the best way to know what you have available is to ask the facility contact when you call, and even possibly mention it again when you go for Monday setup. And I know we've been emphasizing the schools like crazy in this briefing, but we don't want to leave out all of you chiefs and assistant chiefs that are serving in non-schools. It's a little bit of an easier lift for you because almost without exception, you're going to be in the same room, the same entrance as voters are used to. So I know we're stressing the schools a lot because that's going to be quite different. But the same thing does apply for you as well. Just to confirm, when you go to speak with your facility contact at the non-school polling places, you'll ask them to confirm the same. Can we still use this coffee pot? Can we still use the refrigerator, et cetera?
Okay, great. And you and Sean have talked about additional signage. How are we going to get those signs? Where are they going to be? How does that process work?
The large A-frames will be handled by the voting equipment team, because those signs won't be delivered or have not been delivered with the voting equipment cage. You'll receive your regular curbside sign with your voting equipment cage, but the extra A-frame that indicates where the new voting entrance will be handled by the voting equipment team. It will be set up by the time polls open. You'll also be the rovers will also have some smaller signs, like 11 by 17, that we will also attach to the door that voters are used to, just in case they blow right past that large yellow A-frame and go up and attempt to buzz in, which is usually what happens. It's a locked entrance for this particular election in most of the schools. So we will put those A-frames once again at the entrance that the voters are used to. And I received one thing I also want to point out is that means that curbside will be at the new entrance. I received a comment from somebody that was confused because they didn't know where curbside was because the polling entrance has changed. And the simple explanation for that is the election team can't stand up to curbside voting locations. So when an entrance is closed, curbside is not available there. It will be where the voter entrance is. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. And any other questions that you all might have when you go out, and please feel free once again to contact me, contact the office. We'll do our best to help sort out any lingering confusion. But the schools and the non-schools they're ready. So it should go very well. The December 9th special went incredibly well, given the fact that we had school in session for that election as well.
It did go smoothly. And that was well, thanks to the good execution by the chiefs and assistant chiefs. I have a couple of questions for Arash, our election officer manager. The first one is, when do reserve chiefs and assistant chiefs receive their assignments?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because of course we can't ensure these kind of smooth operations without this really amazing team of reserve chiefs. So, um, as what we've let everyone know, you are guaranteed to work on election day. There will be a number of y'all that will get your assignments the day before, and there will be a smaller number that we reserve for the day of. So you'll be receiving your assignment first thing in the morning. So we ask that you be prepared to head to your assigned precinct as soon as possible. In the unlikely case that we have a chief or assistant chief that can't make it in, we want to be able to maintain the same opening time of 6 a.m. So if you don't get an assignment by Monday, the 19th, you will get one on the 20th. And hopefully it is not due to an emergency, but just that you'll be assigned in a role that is vacant.
All righty. And our second question for you is, will it be possible for chiefs, assistant chiefs, reserve chiefs, etc., to get a physical copy of the notebook before picking up their supplies on Monday the 19th?
Definitely more likely than those who are serving on the 13th. I can guarantee you that, just because of the turnaround time, and we're still waiting on the final round of them to be printed. When we do receive them, we will be reaching out to everyone, most likely after Wednesday, just because we're going to be dealing with an election on Tuesday and canvassing on Wednesday. But I believe the earliest we can expect to be reaching out to inform you of potential pickup times would be Thursday. That would be the dates are all over the place for me right now, but that would be the 15th. So sometime after the 15th, maybe even that weekend, we might have some select scheduled pickup times to provide. But this will be the exact same Chiefs notebook that for the 13th. So if you are serving for the 13th, that is going to be the exact same notebook. And if you have served in December or even November, it's very similar material. And because we're not using the portal, there's not going to be a lot of the specific things like dates in there. So content-wise, you will have that. And I believe, Gene, the online version of that should be uploaded pretty soon. That could be accessed and searched by our chiefs and assistant chiefs in the meantime, if they need to reference anything. Is that
So
correct?
soon that it's already posted, Arash.
There we go. See, I'm too slow for that. But yes, but I know that how much of a physical Chiefs notebook is important. So just stay tuned. We'll let you know in less than a week of the expected days and times for pickup.
Okay. And I'm going to take this last question here that just came in about tables and chairs being delivered. If your polling place indicated that they did not have enough adult-sized chairs and tables, we required them to tell us if how they're going to get those, and if they're a school, they need to order those from the FCPS central warehouse and tell us when they're going to be delivered. So when you go to your polling place next week and do your site visit, you're going to want to make sure that you speak with that person and confirm with them, do you have enough adult size, not attached chairs, adult size tables? And if you don't, did you order them and when are they coming? And if you don't get a satisfactory answer, please call us 703-324-4735. We and Beth will go to bat for you and make sure you get whatever that you need. And that's all we have in the questions.
Thanks, Gene. With respect to site visits, I do want to mention that cages are being delivered early next week, Monday and Tuesday. So go ahead and plan for after that. Try to coordinate with your facility so you can be sure that you're there after the cage has been delivered, so you can confirm that it's been delivered Monday and Tuesday, depending on your facility type. And if that's all the questions we have, I just want to say thank you all for joining us. And thanks for being with us here today. And thank you for serving in this special election. It's a significant challenge to do a special election, especially when we have multiple going on. But you guys are the ones who really make it happen. You're out there in the precincts. You're helping voters. So truly, thank you for serving. And again, Happy New Year. Reach out if you need anything from us. But otherwise, have a great election day. Thanks, everyone.